As the war rages on and the killing continues in Gaza, last week South Africa filed an application at the International Criminal Court instituting proceedings against Israel concerning alleged violations by Israel of its obligations under the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide in relation to Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. According to the application, acts and omissions by Israel are genocidal in character, as they are committed with the requisite specific intent to destroy Palestinians in Gaza as a part of the broader Palestinian national, racial, and ethnical group. The application also alleges that the conduct of Israel, through its state organs, state agents, and other persons and entities acting on its instructions or under its direction, control, or influence in relation to Palestinians in Gaza, is in violation of its obligations under the Genocide Convention. For more on that, we go to Moscow to speak with analyst Mark Sleboda. Mark, what do you make of this?
A question that a few people have asked me in recent days, talking about the Israeli military operation in Gaza, coming on the heels of Hamas's October 7th attack, Operation Al-Aqsa Flood. And one of the things they ask me is, what is Israel's goal here? They say they want to defeat Hamas. And they said, how can they defeat Hamas? What does that look like? And there's really only one way for Israel to decisively defeat Hamas. And that is the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians from the Gaza Strip. Right. And that is absolutely what they intend. I mean, and they are saying that. They've said it repeatedly. And they continue saying it. Just in the last few days, two Israeli ministers in the government of the unity government at this point, representing all of Israeli political society, but still with Netanyahu as the prime minister. We had a comment from the Israeli finance minister, Bezalel Smotrich, and he said, quote, "What needs to be done in the Gaza Strip is to encourage emigration. If there are 100,000 or 200,000 Arabs in Gaza and not 2 million Arabs, the entire discussion on the day after will be totally different." And then we also had comments from the National Security Minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir. And he was just as explicit, encouraging the residents of Gaza to emigrate outside of Gaza is the right, just, moral, and humane solution. So, I mean, they're being perfectly honest about this. And this prompted actually a response from the United States. The U.S. State Department has condemned these comments as inflammatory and responsible as they continue to shove bombs, air defense missiles, and other weapons into the Israeli hands. Now, what they really mean is you're not supposed to say that part out loud. That's what they really mean. Like, there's no question, right? I mean, we have heard some suggestions, some absolutely absurd comments from U.S. officials in that, Israel needs to take care with what they're doing, or they'll drive the Palestinians into the hands of Hamas. Like, what are you talking about? You're carpet bombing their city, and you think they're going to turn to Israel instead of their own people. I mean, maybe not everyone in Gaza agrees with the political prescription of Hamas, but to suggest that any Palestinians would ever make a choice between Israel and Hamas in favor of Israel, and is just absurd. That is never a possibility. And we've seen reports in the Western media that the U.S. from the beginning has tried to leverage, pressure, cajole Egypt to open the border to large numbers of Palestinian refugees. And we've heard repeatedly from the Israeli defense ministers and others is that the goal is to drive the Palestinians out of the Gaza Strip into the Sinai Desert, right, where presumably they could be set up in tent camps, never to return, or driven into Israel or into Egypt itself, never to return. Now, the Egyptian government of al-Sisi has no love for Hamas. They see them as just they came to power by overthrowing the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt after they were elected, and they don't. After the Muslim Brotherhood were elected, and they see that Hamas is just Muslim Brotherhood across the border. That's the way they view. That said, they understand perfectly that if they accepted Palestinian refugees as Israel went about clearing Gaza, that they would never be allowed to return, that they would be saddled with all of these refugees, and that Palestine would cease to have any future as a state. Not that it really does in the minds of the U.S. or Israel now. Despite the U.S.'s slap on the wrists to Netanyahu's officials, they continue providing them military assistance, which tends to make me believe that they're not sincere when they criticize genocidal comments, and these are clear genocidal rhetoric. Let's be perfectly honest about that, right, coming from officials of the Israeli government. And really, this is nothing new. This is just an acceleration of a timetable, right, that's been going on for decades. Right. The ethnic cleansing of Palestine has occurred in settlement by building for decades now, and it was always intended that way. U.S. President Truman, in a documentary about it, said, quote, "We took Palestine," meaning took it from the Palestinians, "in small doses. If you can't move 5 or 6 million people out of a country and fill it up with 5 or 6 million more, and expect both sets of them to be pleased." So the U.S. has always been on board with the ethnic cleansing of Palestine. It's just they don't want a spotlight shined on the process. They just want it done quietly as possible.
Of course. Well, I'd like to, if we had more time, go into the competing models that that show the U.S. rhetoric, how it changes on a dime between the situation in Ukraine and the situation in Palestine. And it's interesting that what you're looking at with Gaza Strip basically is they have already absorbed just about the rest of Palestine. You've got the West Bank, little chunk up on the top, which is peppered with Israeli settlements, and then just the last piece before the shoreline on the other side. So they're from the river to the sea. They've gone from the river. They're almost at the sea. Once they get rid of Gaza, they're all the way at the sea. But what I'm interested in looking at is the geopolitical situation, because we've been looking at the shenanigans of the U.S. and U.K. primarily have been playing at the UN Security Council, trying to get a resolution demanding a ceasefire to no avail, with the U.S. finally vetoing it out in the open. Anyone, however, that a signatory to the UN Charter automatically has standing to bring a case to the ICJ, meaning any one of the 190 whatever members of the UN could have done this, and now South Africa has done that. Now, what are the geopolitical implications of that? That's the part I'm interested in. That
none. I mean, no one cares, and they have no power to enforce anything on Israel or Israeli leaders.
Well, we're out of time, Mark. I appreciate your time. We'll speak with you again next week.
Thanks for having me.
For KPFK, I'm Don DeBar.